certain basic things. And while you're not greedy, you really do need to finance this thing. So how do you do it? Well, that's our question today. Hi everyone, and welcome again to another episode of Eternity Changers. My name is Paul Allen Clifford, and if you have any questions or comments, just head on over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/contact, and there's all the information there. And you can also hit me up on Twitter, Paul Allen Cliff, and that would be a perfectly acceptable way to get a hold of me as well. So, if you want to continue with your dream, chances are that you need to finance it. What I mean by that isn't the same as financing a car or anything like that. What I mean is you need to bring in money. Now, to some people, that might sound like an abhorrent concept. So, the first thing I want to talk about is basically why I don't think that that's a bad thing. You see, there's sometimes some controversy where people say, well, the Apostle Paul said that, but Jesus never did, or something like that about the New Testament. Here's something that they both said, so I just don't think that it should be controversial at all. So it was important enough that the Apostle Paul repeated it verbatim, and it was important enough that Jesus said it and the gospel writers recorded it. What is it? The worker is worth his wages. Maybe you're a King James kind of person and you'll read it as the worker is worth his hire. Or maybe a more modern translation says a worker is worth being paid. No matter how you read that, the idea is the same. That if someone does work, they should be paid for it. Now, too often Christians kind of zero in on the money changers in the temple story. That's a great story, but we don't understand it. We don't understand it because we live in the 21st century. In the time of Jesus, there were some very important things that you need to know to understand that story. And you need to understand this to know why Jesus was so very mad. First off, Gentiles could only go into one part of the temple, the court of Gentiles. They weren't allowed into the inner court, and they definitely weren't allowed into the center part where only the high priests could go. So, with that said, that's the only place that they were allowed. Guess where the money changers were? Right there. Right in the court of the Gentiles. They were actually taking up space where people that were far from God should have been. That angered Jesus. Secondly, it wasn't that they were doing business, it was how they were doing business. You see, the Sadducees, the temple elite who were in charge of the temple, had decided that Roman money could not be in the temple. But like the court of the Gentiles, that was okay. So they set up businesses where they got a cut of having people as money changers. That's their title. They change money. And so what you would do is you would come in with your Roman money, but the Roman money was no good. They were kind of like quarters at Chuck E. Cheese. You needed the special tokens. So you could change your evil Roman money for temple money. And the temple money, they had a very unfavorable exchange rate to the people coming in. So you couldn't give money that you just carried around to God, and you had to exchange it at a very unfavorable rate. And so it was bilking people out of money. So let's take a look at this situation. Jesus goes to the temple. The only place the Gentiles can be is occupied by people who aren't trying to help people come into relationship with God. No, in fact, what they're doing is they are not doing a fair business, but doing an unfair business where they have a monopoly on getting money that people can use inside the temple. And that the purpose of that is to line the pockets of the elite. So what they're doing is they are preying on the most vulnerable people. Probably the closest thing that we have today to this would be like perhaps some of the predatory lending schemes that are out there, where they do business against the very poor, giving them very high interest rates. Instead of trying to figure out how to help these people repair their credit, they actually make it worse. So that's, from a business standpoint, the kind of business that Jesus was opposed to. The kind of religiosity that he was opposed to was the kind that kept people out. So if your church keeps people out instead of inviting them in, that's more of a concern. So, enough of my mini sermon. That is why the money changers in the temple situation so angered Jesus. And if you doubt what I say, I want you to look at the verse that Jesus quotes. He said from Isaiah that God said that his temple should be a house for who? All nations. And you have turned it into what? A den of thieves. So, those were the two reasons that Jesus was so mad. Not because people were doing business, but because people were excluding and ripping people off. Yet this, he also said, a worker is worth his wages. So look at that from both sides. It's okay to be paid, but it's not okay to rip people off. It's okay to do business. It's not okay to exclude the people that need God the most from getting to him. So that is where we start. So if it's the case that it's okay to make money, if it's okay to finance your dreams, to finance your calling, then how should you do it? Well, there are a few different ways. First off, you can do it indirectly. So this is kind of how the Apostle Paul did it. He didn't take donations or anything like that. In fact, what he did was he was a tent maker. So he was what we would call today bivocational. He had two jobs: missionary, that he didn't get paid for, and tent maker, which is how he got paid. So he'd work during the day, and then during the time where no one worked because it was too darn hot in the Middle East, he would go out into the temple, not the temple, he would go into the courtyard of the city and he would preach, engage in conversations, build relationships. On the Sabbath, he would do that more. At night, he would write. Maybe he'd have a scribe that he'd hire to do that, but how he financed that was with another job. Perfectly good way to do it, indirectly. Now the other way is directly. So getting money from what you do. The first thing that a lot of people think of are donations. And you might know that I have some donations. So if you head on over to patreon.com/PaulAllenCliff, patreon.com/PaulAllenCliff, PaulAlanclif, that's where you could support. So that's one way to do it. But one thing that I've noticed is getting people to donate is difficult. It's not easy to do. It's a very, very low percentage of people will donate. And that's even with reward levels. So that's why some of the Christian radio stations that do pledge support or public television, while they're always having those pledge drives and it feels like they drag on forever and ever and ever, well, the reason is it's very hard to do. So that's the downside of donations. They're difficult to accomplish. If you're in a church, you might know that about 20% of people actually finance the ministries of the church, if everything goes well. It really should be 100%, but it's not. It's 20%. So getting donations is difficult. I'm not saying that's not a valid model, it's just hard. Next, you have the option of selling products. You might know that I'm an author. I've written, well, 6 books, but 4 have been published, including my latest, which is Church Video School, which was released yesterday as I record this, so August 5th, 2014. And I'll tell you more about that at the end of the show. So those books help finance this ministry, this thing that I'm doing. It helps finance my calling. And the more products you have, to a certain point, the more likely you are to be able to finance what you're doing. Next, the thing that you can do is you can sell services. So you can sell what you do as opposed to something that you've made. Now, the downside of selling services is there's only one of you. See this? This is only one of me. I don't have a twin. I don't have a clone. It's just me. So if I'm the one doing the service, there's only so much that I could do. If I do 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, that is, well, let's say that I take a couple of weeks off here and there, I take off a day, whatever. It equals out to 50 weeks a year. 50 times 40, that's 2,000 hours of work that can be done a year. So I've got 2,000 hours that I can sell, but I can't because I've got to do marketing, I've got to do all the administrative stuff, etc. Even if I had other people to do all that other stuff, that's still limited to 2,000 hours a year. So there's a limit of how much I could do. Now, if I replicate into people, if I say, hey, this is my assistant who charges a little less but knows and believes all the stuff I do, then I can get more. So you see how that works, that you can just build up and up and up by having other people that do the services with you as part of your organization. But there are limits. So what have I chosen? I've chosen all of these things. I do indirect work to help finance this. I'm hoping to do less and less of that. I do direct work, and I ask for donations. I sell products. I sell services. Whatever it takes to help make this happen, because as it turns out, the way our society is made, it takes money. It takes money to pay for the electricity that is powering the lights that you see. It takes money to pay for the internet to send the signal out. It takes money to pay for the microphone you see clipped to my collar. It takes money. It takes money to feed me so that I can do this, etc. So I don't think you should be ashamed of making money. I think that you should recognize that this is part of what you can do and part of how you can influence the world by going out and changing eternity. If you're interested, I know that this show isn't targeted towards the people that would be, but I do have a new book out. This is Church Video School, which you can pick up your copy at trinitydigitalmedia.com/CVS for Church Video School, not to be confused with the pharmacy. And by picking up a copy, that would help me in doing the show. Or if you're all in favor of doing things like donations, head on over to patreon.com/PaulAllenCliff. That's patreon.com/PaulAllenCliff. So, one other thing that I'd love for you to do is subscribe to the show. If you're on YouTube, subscribe there. If not, head over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/subscribe. If you're already subscribed and you just want to help out and you've got 2 minutes, go to trinitydigitalmedia.com/iTunes reviews. Click on the link there. Write a sentence of why you like the show. Add 4 or 5 stars. That helps me get the word out. So, I hope that this information has helped you as you're going out and changing eternity. Until next time, this is Paul Allen Clifford with trinitydigitalmedia.com.